Hey, everybody. Welcome to the GMI Rocket Show. Today's episode number 132. I'm your host, Roman Zelichenko, former immigration attorney turned entrepreneur. I am the co-founder and CEO of Laborious, an immigration tech company that automates H-1B compliance. And I'm also the founder of GMI Rocket, a digital marketing agency for the immigration industry, which, of course, brings you this show. I am very excited about today's episode. I have a fellow Brooklyn Law School alum, fellow attorney turned entrepreneur, although arguably my guest is better than me because he's still practicing immigration law and starting a tech company, something that I never thought possible, but is we're going to talk about today. So our guest today is Jason Jia, who is the founder of Jia Law Group, but also, and importantly for today, the founder of Unfold Legal AI, which is an immigration tech company that uses artificial intelligence to help with document information extraction, with drafting of documents. They have a FOIA feature. They have a lot of cool stuff that they're working on. And the story is really compelling and really interesting about how Jason, had this idea of creating better technology as AI got more popularized, built something for his firm, and then effectively realized, like, hey, this is something that we can give to to others and really commercialize. So it's a really exciting story, and I'm really pumped to dive into it. Before we get started, I do want to say thank you to the main sponsor of this episode, 8 a.m. DocketWise. For those of you who've been in the industry for a while, DocketWise. Their company recently rebranded to 8 a.m. So part of that is remembering it's 8 a.m. DocketWise. And just so you know, 8 a.m. DocketWise, in case you are not using them, is an end-to-end immigration case management platform with best-in-class immigration forms. That's really what they launched kind of with and what they're known for. Really customizable questionnaires in lots and lots of different languages to help support your clients. Industry-leading integrations, including with my company, Laborless, really great customer service. One of the things I really appreciate and respect about DocketWise is that they also create a lot of just free content for the industry. They have a really great blog. They have a podcast as well. They have articles that are helpful, an ebook, and so much more. They support things like this show and other initiatives. So I really appreciate them. And, so huge thanks to them. If you are in the market for a new case management system or even just forms, a lot of folks use DocketWise forms alongside other things. Check them out. Visit 8am. So the number 8am.com/DocketWise. And, of course, tell them you heard about them from the GMI Rocket Show. So with that, really excited to bring on my guest, Jason. Jason, thank you so much for being here. And I am excited to talk to you.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
It's, you're in New York City, and I feel like I should probably do this live at some point.
Yes.
Because I do it from home. It makes it easier for all the guests, but it's like you're a couple miles away. But next episode, number 2. So we have so much to talk about. Usually with these episodes, I really love to start in the beginning, right? So I like to get to know the guest. I think it's really interesting for the audience to get to know the guest on a human level, because that really connects a lot of the dots that lead up to you starting your law firm, as we'll get to, and then of course you starting your technology company, Unfold Legal. So you are an immigrant yourself, right, from China to the U.S. Can you talk a little bit about that? What was your story? What was your family's story? Kind of how did immigration sort of become a part of your life before you even got to the U.S.?
Thank you. Yeah. So I was born and I was born in Beijing, only child, the one-child policy. My mom actually came to the U.S. when I was 4, and my dad followed her a year later. Came when I was 5. So I grew up with my grandparents, and they sent me to a public boarding school until I was 13, 14 years old. That's when I joined them in the U.S. I think back in the 90s, I didn't realize this back then because most of my friends and classmates from this boarding school, most of their parents weren't on either, so I didn't feel any different or anything. But I certainly didn't see my parents a lot. I
Mhm.
think the first memory I have of like going out with my mom or just like a normal weekend was like when I was 10 or
Mhm.
11. And that's when my mom got her green card and she was able to go back and visit me. And I think I first maybe had my memory with my dad when I was almost like 12 or something like that. And that's when he first went back and visited me.
Mhm.
So I think that was my first sort of encounter with the immigration system, which was to go through the Guangzhou consulate for my interview process, and
Mhm.
then eventually I joined them here. Coming here was first it was a lot of culture shock, right? It was eating hamburgers versus like noodles back at home, hot dogs for the first time, and language. I didn't speak English at all, and so learning a new language, adjust to a new culture, that was a lot. Also, just like watching my parents through their day to day. My parents had already divorced back then, so I grew up with my mom, and we stayed in this like house with. So she rented 2 rooms. Um, in that big house, and like so like she was in one room, I was in the other room, and she moved from New York to California because she thought that that environment, that city had a better school district, and she, public school. So I when I joined her, I actually moved with her to California. So I grew up in SoCal. um, but it was a big culture shock, a lot of uncertainty, anxiety. So that's also another reason why I think eventually I got into immigration.
Mhm.
I think that also shaped a lot of who I am today.
Do you, it's interesting that you kind of had, your experience initially with immigration was the separation of your family, in a sense. I mean, your personal experience with it was when you were going through the consulate,
Mhm.
right, going for it. But your actual the impact it had on your life initially was your parents immigrating to the U.S. and working hard and right and like trying to figure out their status before they can come, and that created a long period of time that you couldn't see them. And that's interesting. You don't hear that often, right? I mean, you hear often kids go with their family. Maybe the family tries to go together. You had the benefit of having a boarding school and caretakers back in China so that you could go to school without having that disruption at the age of 4 or 5. But then the cost, of course, was like you said, you didn't
Yeah.
really have memories with them until you were 10, 12 years old. Did you, when you were in the boarding school, did you, was this mostly other Chinese students or did you have international students there? Like what kind of school was it?
Yeah, it's a government subsidized school, I want to
Mm,
say. It's public, no
mm,
tuition kind of situation. It was a good school. And I still am in touch with a lot of my friends
mm.
from the elementary school. Um, but that's also it's an hour and a half away from the city, so you get on a bus every weekend to go to the school, and then you come back and stay with your family during the weekend, basically.
I see.
Yeah,
Wow.
and so that went on for a few years. My summer camp. Now I have 2 kids, so every summer is about summer camp, right? So my summer camp was just staying with different relatives for 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. So
Yeah. Hey, that builds resilience,
it certainly does.
It's
Yeah,
nothing's ever the same, and you kind of are figuring things out as you go.
yeah.
So you came to the US, eventually you moved here and reunited with your parents. Um you mentioned you grew up in on the West Coast in California. Did you find like that you eventually kind of eased into it, or did you always feel like, oh, I'm an immigrant? I mean, were there other like
Mhm.
Chinese kids around you, or just other immigrant kids around you?
There were, but not many.
Mm,
Certainly felt very lonely at times.
mm,
Um, didn't fit in. I think when I truly felt part of the community. It was when I joined the soccer team, my high school soccer team, and then I had teammates, and then you go out and you play games. So that was a lot of fun.
That's interesting. I grew up in Queens, where I know your family lived here as well, right? In Queens for some time.
Yeah. So my parents, when they first came to the U.S., they started out from Flushing, Queens, which is, I think, maybe this is so Flushing has a very sentimental value to me. So that's why we have an office in Flushing now. And my mom used to work like 3 jobs. My dad was like a shoe boy, and then like delivered food, and he worked at a 7-Eleven. So just odd jobs here and there to support the family.
Yeah. And kind of growing up in Queens, you see that a lot. I mean, I grew up I moved here with my family when I was 2. So I didn't have much of a culture shock because I don't have many memories from the former Soviet Union. But everyone around me was an immigrant from all over the world, or most people. So it wasn't weird. It was interesting. Everybody had different smells at their homes, and different food, and their parents all had different accents. But it wasn't weird to have an accent, right? It wasn't weird when your parents had an accent and whatnot. So it's interesting to, the experiences are so different moving to a place that is really mostly immigrants versus not. So you in high school, you played soccer. Did you kind of know what you wanted to do already back then, or were you sort of like figuring out America and like
still trying to figure it out? Yeah, not at all. Yeah.
Was education a big, did your parents push you and say, look, you got to go to school. We did this. We brought you here. This is a new opportunity. You have to do well in school.
Yeah, they didn't. I think I'm very thankful for that. They just kind of, I think that they had a lot on their plate, to be fair. So I was on my own for the most part. And I was with my mom too. So she never attended any of my soccer games. I just so to your question, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I have to do better. I have to support for the family. If I think and I read a lot of books. So I felt back then that was my way of sort of achieving the American dream, is by reading more, studying more, going to a good college, and eventually I can get a good job and support the family. As to which specific area, no idea.
How did you know at that time what books to read? I mean,
I just so it's all nonfiction. I read a lot of. I still do. Most of the books I read are biographies. I read about people who are still alive and people who are no longer with us. Lately, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts on AI companies and CEOs and how they build their companies. That has sort of always been part of my life.
Yeah, I'm actually the same. I read a lot of business books as well, but I find the best and most compelling reads are often the biographies, especially the autobiographies, when the memoirs. And it's interesting. I'm curious how you feel about this. I mean, there's the business ones, right, where you read about Elon Musk or Bill Gates or something. And then there's just memoirs of athletes or artists or other people who didn't necessarily build a business, but they achieved something great in their field. And I still learn. In fact, sometimes I learn more from them. Maybe not about the nitty gritty of what do you do with marketing or what do you do with clients or whatnot, but you learn more about, I don't know, thinking outside the box or dealing with challenges and things like that. Do you read or listen to people outside of the business world as well? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I read about athletes. I read about fashion icons. I read about. I love the story where before they are who they are, we know today. I love the story like the shoe dog from Phil Knight. Before Nike, how they were a shoe distributor for a Japanese company. I love to read about that, actually.
Yeah, same. Because where they're coming from. I mean, this is why I love doing this show, right? Because you go to the ALA conferences and others, and you see these companies, and you meet them at this moment in their life and in their career. But where did they come from? What's the background? How did they build it?
My favorite one is James Dyson.
Oh, I haven't read that.
Yeah, like when he released his first working prototype, the vacuum cleaner. I think he was already in his like late 40s.
Wow.
He from like I think he said for 12 years he just kept trying, just keep, every day he tested different prototypes. Nobody knows that. I certainly didn't until I read about his failures, and then now he's one of the most successful innovators of our time.
Mhm. Yeah, and an incredible product designer. That's so great. I think the guy who started Impossible Foods was 63 when he started it. Either Impossible Foods or Beyond Foods. I can't quite remember, but same thing. I mean, it's inspiring, especially when the news is filled with and it's incredible and inspiring, but it's filled with college dropouts who are brilliant and starting companies, and then you might be in your 30s or 40s or later thinking, "There's no more chance for me. It's done." But then you read stories like that and you realize that actually it's never the wrong time to start a business. So you ended up going to school. You went to UC San Diego, and I guess you studied kind of business, right? There.
Yeah, it was. I wouldn't call it business, but so it was more economics, political theories. Yeah, not very concrete, like skills wise. I felt like it was a lot of theories.
Same for me. I mean, I did financial economics and philosophy. Philosophy is even less useful. Did you know that you wanted to go to law school then, or kind of how did the idea of going to law school and potentially becoming a lawyer come about?
I think it was towards my final year in college. I think that I started making a pivot. I wanted to, back then it was more about which occupation, which area would I be able to sort of has a high barrier of entry, but also can sort of allow me to use my background and do something different. I love to read. I love to help people, and I thought, okay, law. I wasn't sure back then, but now thinking back, I think that's what pushed me towards legal.
Mm-hmm. Did you know that you wanted to come to New York? I mean, I'm so happy you came to Brooklyn Law School, but did you want to specifically go to New York, or was it kind
I
of,
did.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
did. Yeah, I wanted to be in a city, in a neighborhood, in a community where there's are a lot of opportunities. And why does New York have a lot of opportunities? Because one, population, GDP. If you look at these hard numbers, I just figured, okay, there are so many people there. There must be a market for lawyers, and it wasn't specific for immigration law. I came to New York. But also Brooklyn Law School had a great reputation for clinics, and I knew at some point, maybe starting a firm or something. So I need to work with real clients, and I thought Brooklyn Law School was the right choice.
So did you, it's interesting that you bring that up. Did you think already at that time, I mean, you were in college thinking about this, you foresaw yourself starting a law firm at some point in the future?
Maybe not starting or my own firm. And I think we'll talk about this later on. I just knew that I wanted to be entrepreneurial in whatever capacity I can be. If it's an associate position, if it's within a firm, then I could use my skills and entrepreneurial spirit, and maybe I can help the firm to grow bigger, create more markets for the firm, create products for the firm. I think that's what I wanted to do. Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing that you thought about that. I kind of, I like to ask my guests, I mean, do you think that you were as a child, I mean, naturally, do you think you were more entrepreneurial? Did you hustle kind of as a kid and, buy and sell stuff, or I don't know, help like your neighbors wash their car for a couple of, some money or whatever? Were you kind of like that naturally or not?
My first influence was my uncle. So my parents weren't around, so my uncle took care of me. He was the one who drove me to my pickup spot every week to get on the bus. And he was in business. And back in the 90s, to be able to afford a car, I just thought, oh, hey, he must be doing something right. So I really looked up to him. And if he picks me up, he asks me if I'm hungry, he would take me to a fast food joint, and that's I was like, oh wow, I want to be like that. So after I came to the States, I did work. I started working very early. I was a student tutor, tutored Chinese to American-born Chinese kids. I did other jobs, library, and yeah, just I always wanted to work and to learn. Had a big ambition. I just nothing concrete. I
Right.
just really wanted to push myself.
Yeah, no, that's it's interesting. I'm kind of similar. Part of the thing what I love about the show is it helps me reflect on my life, right? And especially when I ask those questions. There's some guests who have been hustling since they were kids. They've been washing cars or lemonade stands or buying and selling
Yeah.
stuff or whatnot. And there's some kids or some guests who just all they did was study. They would never even imagine that they would run a business. They wanted to be professors. They just cared about. I was somewhere in the middle. I mean, it sounds like you were potentially somewhere in the middle as well. Like I had ideas and I saw the value of success and sort of the need to be stable, honestly, right? Financially stable in a new country. But I never, at least personally, I had jobs too when I was a kid, but I never thought I can start my own thing. It never came to my mind. It always was, let me go work for somebody. Let me go find work from somebody else. But it's interesting how that changes. Some people are like that from the beginning, and some people, as you and I have, kind of it develops over time when you come up with a good enough idea. Maybe you see enough examples of people around you. So let's talk a little bit about Brooklyn Law School, because we both went there. It's an incredible school for immigration law, although they don't advertise it, and I think they should. There are lots of classes. How did you fall into the immigration law kind of world while you were in school, and what impact, I guess, if any, did it have on you with respect to kind of the work you eventually ended up doing?
Yeah. So one of the things I did, which I highly recommend to all the incoming law school students, is try to get into as many clinics as possible. To have the opportunity to work with real clients. It's something very valuable. So I did actually a lot of clinics, probably the 6 or 7 when I was at Brooklyn Law School. Immigration was one of the clinics, and I just had a terrific experience with Safe Harbor Clinic. Amazing professors, Dan Smulian and Stacy Kaplow. And my team worked on a asylum case with a client who came from Cote D'Ivoire. That was my first experience in real life experience in immigration. We investigated her case, argued her case, won her case. So I had my first one before I graduated from law school. Just an amazing experience all around, and I think that really piqued my interest in immigration.
What year was this? Do you remember?
I think that was 2010. I want to say. I think we started the case in 2009-ish, and then we ultimately won the case in 2010.
And you graduated law school in 2010.
2011.
2011. Okay, so your second year of school, you're working on this case. Did you take other classes as well? I mean, did you say, okay, immigration is something interesting to me. Let me see what else the law school has to offer?
Yeah. I took a lot of business classes, merger acquisition, contract, and so forth. And also, towards the end of my law school life, I think that's when 2010, 2011-ish. Yeah, that's when EB5 started to heating up. And also, that, if you remember, that was also sort of we're going into financial crisis now. So a lot of the developers in your city were looking for ways to finance their projects, because the banks are certainly not lending any construction loans, and EB5 suddenly became this preferred way of raising money for developers. And also that's the prime years of Chinese economy. So a lot of I was getting a lot of inquiries from just friends and family China on EB5. So I just really looked into it. I went to, even before I graduated from law school, I went to the ALA conference, and that was panel on EB5. So I just kind of taught myself on how to do EB5s.
Wow. before you graduated, you started to look into the EB-5 program.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
did you say to yourself, okay, I really actually want to do this when I graduate?
Yeah. So yeah, so I was, very interested to learn about other people's business. So EB5, direct investment, that's a great way to learn about your client's business. Also E2 visa, another great way to learn about business. L1 visa, right? So I just got put into like immigration because I thought that was not only I can learn about the business, I can help them to grow their business. So yeah, so immigration was like, okay, I'm going all in on immigration.
I tell myself sometimes if everything implodes and all my businesses fail and I have to go back to being an attorney, I would love to go back and work on like E2s and L1s and EB5s. I definitely, it's so interesting to help people build their businesses here in the US. It's like two birds with one stone. You get to work on business or help them work on their business, and you help them move their family and hopefully
Yeah.
start a new life here. So you got a job out of law school, right? You started at a law firm that was doing immigration work. You know, talk a little bit about that, because that was sort of a pretty big. I mean, you became partner pretty quickly, and then that, of course, eventually led you to kind of part ways and run your own practice. But can you talk a little bit about what was it like to now you're starting to work, and how did you end up becoming a partner quickly? Were you bringing in business? Were you thinking about new, avenues for the firm? Like, how did you do that?
So this was a boutique firm on Wall Street. We did exclusively immigration work. When I joined the firm, I actually joined it was primarily litigation in removal defense. So I appeared for interviews. I actually drafted and worked on a lot of motions and briefs to BIA and circuit briefs and so forth. But I knew there was an opportunity for me because the firm wasn't tapping into the business immigration market. And I, figure since I was very interested in EB5 and E2s and L1s, why don't I, right, take the initiative, and maybe I can help the firm to grow that part of the business. So that's what I did. Thankfully, the partner listened and he was supportive. And so we just, I grew up. I went to conferences. I developed business partnerships. Went to China. I think 2 years in, I took a CPA firm from the UK and I brought them with me to China, and we did a roadshow. We visited 4 cities, and we had offline webinars and one-on-one consultations with clients. Anytime there's like EB5 green card involved, there should be a conversation about tax planning too, right? So early, I was doing that in like 2013, maybe 2014-ish, a few years after law school, I was doing that. And I just started building a firm. And then it got to a stage where I think my side of the business was getting more, or maybe even like bigger than the firm's business. So that's what I learned. It's like, if you don't bring the value, if you are just doing the work, then you are on the expenses column, right? If you're bringing the value, you're bringing the revenue, you're bringing the cases, then you are adding to the revenue column, right?
You're an asset.
So yeah, then you become an asset. So that's what I wanted. That's sort of how I became a partner. It's because I was bringing in the business, I was developing I was training new associates, and so forth.
Well, let me ask you this, because I think that's a really incredible. I mean, it's amazing that you did that and you took the initiative. It's also really great that your attorney, that your boss effectively said, allowed you to do it, right? Despite the fact that the firm did not focus on these kind of cases at all. How did you? Because I think this is a good kind of learning opportunity for attorneys out there who maybe would want to do something like this. How did you justify it? I mean, did you pay for the flights to China and all that stuff yourself, or did you and then were you able to, did you use your vacation days for this, or did you say, look, this is a business trip, and so I'm going to take off from running to court and filing motions, but trust me, this is going to pay off?
Yeah, great question. The firm did not pay for it, so I think that was the like the risk and the reward part.
Mhm,
If it failed, then it was my own dime. If it succeeded, then the firm obviously gets the credit for it.
mhm,
I reinvested a lot of revenue into marketing, and also the overseas trips and conferences and whatnot. So yeah, so it was a calculated risk, but I knew how big the market was. I knew that you know for a lot of the Chinese nationals back then, and even nowadays, EB5 remained to be the probably the one of the most reliable and quickest path to come to the US. If you don't have an employer to sponsor you, you don't have a bachelor degree in the US, then and they were doing well in China. So yeah, so I figured there was a very big EB5 market,
mhm,
and people needed someone like me who's admitted in the US, a lawyer who can explain the process, and I also was bringing a lot of value with me. I was bringing CPA with me for
mhm,
tax planning. I was also working on some of their investments like real estate and so forth. So I just figured there's a niche market for me. And once we get into AI, I can talk about this too.
mhm,
All of my business kind of started with just a very niche area.
mhm,
Um, and people always want to focus on the big TAM, like how big is the market? But I tend to just want to focus on the TAM and how can I do it very differently from others, and then create that market for myself.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you on that. I mean, that's why they say the riches are in the niches, right?
And
It's a great place to start with a law practice. So it's incredible. So you took on this risk. I mean, you had the wherewithal to do that and the risk tolerance, but you saw the potential upside. You did that. You started to bring in business. The firm started to, like, your side of the firm, let's say, started to grow. It makes perfect sense that you become kind of a partner at some point. But then eventually you did break off and on your own. Was that a difficult kind of decision for you,
mhm.
or was it maybe a challenging moment because now suddenly you run everything, right? Whereas before you had a partner.
It was the most challenging
Mhm,
time of my career at the time. I never wanted to be, I mean, start off a firm on my own. If I did, then I wouldn't want to invest all the revenue back into marketing the firm, right? So I actually never wanted to start on my own. But I think the vision for the firm became very different. And that was my first time going through a divorce, so it was very very difficult.
but you did it, obviously,
Yeah, yeah.
and quite successfully. What and we don't have to dive too deep into this, but I'm
Mhm.
curious, like, what were some of the steps that maybe you took to get started on your own? And I'm thinking about the people who are listening to this, maybe attorneys who are working with somebody or somewhere else. Maybe they eventually do want to have their own practice. Like, what were some of the things? Because I think this will eventually relate to what technology you're using. What are your
Mhm.
expenses like? How are you charging people? What are your processes, right? You have to do all this from scratch now. So
Yeah.
what are some of those things that did you bring things on from, what you were using in your prior firm? Like, you knew the tools, so you just started with that? Or did you say, okay, I have an opportunity right now to start everything from scratch. Let's just burn
Mhm.
the whole place down and build from the bottom.
Some of the things we started from the bottom, like banking relationships, that was the firms. Now we have to establish our own banking partners.
Mhm,
But the clients and the team and the system, the infrastructure in place, we've been running that for years.
mhm,
So that's, thankfully we still have, everybody came, the clients came, and we had very early on for my side of the practice, eventually at JLG, we put a lot of emphasis on data. So data collection, data security, and we transitioned all of that to the new firm. But in terms of the outside world, I think this is more on the vendors, right? The banking, the benefits, workers' comp, insurance, a new lease, landlord. Suddenly you have to deal with all these things now. So that was new, but everything else, thankfully, was in place.
It's interesting that the things that you do have to deal with from the beginning versus what you can bring along. It's amazing that your team came and obviously the clients came. I want to actually, it's a really good opportunity for me to just take a very short pause. And I want to say thank you to our second sponsor. And because you brought up this idea of like, you brought over the data and you brought over the processes. So just the quick thank you to Lawfully, the second sponsor of this episode. So, I mean, for those who don't know Lawfully, they started as a mobile app to help individuals and families track their own immigration cases. So it was not a B2B tool; it was a B2C tool. And actually, to date, they've helped over 2.5 million people track over 6 million cases, which is insane numbers. But then last year, it's pretty cool. Last year, they noticed that they had some users that were tracking like hundreds of cases or thousands, and they reached out to them and to say, who are these people with these massive families? But no, of course, it turned out that the people using Lawfully were in that volume were legal professionals. So, and then that basically sparked Lawfully to build Lawfully Pro, which helps immigration law firms, in-house mobility teams, and nonprofits to stay on top of their cases across, USCIS, NVC, DOL, EOIR, and others. And so they capture a lot of that data, and they're able to address case status questions more easily and just strategize with their foreign national clients. So they're a great team. They have over 120 organizations. So that includes small law firms and mid-sized law firms, nonprofits, and corporate teams using Lawfully Pro to help track the case statuses of all their clients. So they have a dashboard and reporting and notifications and stuff. So for anyone who's watching and listening, if you're at a law firm, of course, but also if you're in-house or have an immigration nonprofit or just within a nonprofit doing immigration work, check them out. It's lawfully.com and just check out the Pro tool. And if you talk to them, tell them you heard about them from the GMI Rocket Show. So thank you to Lawfully. And this is a good way for us to segue into tech. Okay, so you've now launched your law firm. You're doing EB5, you're doing E2, like you're growing. JLG is growing. You eventually sort of start to think about technology, especially when AI really blows up. But you guys have been looking at AI since before the ChatGPT craze. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because again, it's one thing to be a lawyer, as you know, and maybe even use tools. It's another thing to be playing around with and experimenting with technology that's not even in the mainstream yet. So how did you get to that notion of we should start looking at AI and following it to see when it becomes good enough to use at our law practice?
There was no AI, right? There was we were also experimenting a lot with a lot of case management tools and so forth. One of the things we still do today is that we on a quarterly basis, we want to look at the process that we have in place. I always ask the question, how can we improve efficiency? How can we improve the metrics, benchmarks? How can we improve everything? One of the sayings, and during trainings here at JLG and at Unfold, I like to emphasize on, it's it's just this saying of, this is the way that other people do it. This is how we've been doing it. This is how it's supposed to be done. I challenge everyone to think twice before they give me that answer again. So I always go back to the same system. Even nowadays, even 7 years in, 8 years in at JLG, we still do this. Every quarter, we look at the process and say, how can we do it differently? So back to your question, when we transitioned over the database and everything to JLG, in the early days, it was difficult. It wasn't like we weren't like a big firm. There were like maybe 7, 8 people of us, And there weren't that many cases, to be honest. But as we continue to build, we had bigger clients and more cases. And one of the things that I always wanted to eliminate, not to eliminate, but to automate, is this all the time that attorneys and myself used to respond to status updates.
Hmm.
Because I get it. It's immigration. It's high stake, right? But your lawyer's working on it. You don't hear from your lawyer. You call them. Paralegal just give you some vague answers. Yeah, we're gonna get to it. We're working on it. But that's not a good answer, right? But
Yeah.
honestly, from the law firm side, that's probably the most you can give them at the moment, right? Um, so so I so I just asked myself, how can we deliver a better client experience? So the first tool we built wasn't AI at all. It was case management. It
Hmm.
was just status updates. Honestly, if so, and it's still live today. We just don't license it to other firms. And at JLG, we still use it internally. Every H1B season is a big thing. Client gets notifications from the platform, and it's like broken down into different stages. So as an HR professional, if you log into your account, you can see all the 25 H1Bs that we're working on and the stage for each case, and the ball is in whose court. And this way, the employees can look at it and say, "Oh, hey, my HR needs to sign this," and they don't have to call us, right? And every time there's an update, everybody gets a notification from the system. Oh, hey, your H1B has been approved. The H1B approval notice has been uploaded to your account. That's how we sort of started looking into tech and building our own system. And then AI came along, and then ChatGPT came along, and then we started thinking about, oh, hey, what about this drafting and research that
Hmm.
also takes a very long time for us to do sometimes, and how can we also automate that? How can we streamline that process? And that's how we started getting into drafting.
It's amazing because you've taken on, if you really think about it, so many risks. I mean, it is a risk to build your own. It's a big investment to build it on your own. I mean, I don't know the extent to which you did that, but did you hire a team, an outside team?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
So that's a big corporate, that's a big financial risk.
Yeah. So we actually built that during, I think, the first 1.0 system. We built that in COVID. We this is so interesting because that was a whole new learning experience for me too. Learning how to talk to engineers. For all the AI founders out there, if you don't have a tech background, dude, I'm with you. What you want to build and how they understand what you want to build is completely two different things. So for 1.0, we contracted our tech out to a team, but now we're building things in-house.
So you have a CTO, right?
We have a CTO. He's based in California. So really just on this like journey not transitioning, but like I'm still doing both. The law firm have a great team in place, and for Unfold, I think we're small, but we're very mighty, really, really good engineering team. So that's what sort of allows me to be able to do both at the same time.
So you started to build technology. It wasn't called Unfold Legal AI. It wasn't, it was just the tools that JLG had, right? At what point did you start to think about, we should probably market some of this? I mean, did you have people come to you and say, hey, I really like this, can I use it? Or was it a business decision or something else?
Yeah, let's start showing the tools, the products we had developed to other attorneys, and they seemed to find it very interesting. We started giving out free trials. And one of the things we do here at Unfold, we want to keep a very close pulse on how they like the product and how we can improve on it. We check in with them on a weekly basis. And that's actually how we started building FOIA. It's because a lot of people were asking for FOIA. And we're still improving on the business immigration drafting tools. Maybe at some point we'll release and license the case management tool or merge the two into one platform. But for now, the traction for 2.0, which is Unfold Legal AI. It's driving a lot of momentum forward. So we just sort of listen to our customers and see what they want us to build.
So talk a little bit about what is Unfold Legal AI today. What do you, if I'm a law firm and, I'm intrigued by your story and I'm interested in exploring other legal, or AI tools, what can I expect? Because as you said, case management, that's not what you're doing, at least not right now. You have something internal. It's not public facing. What do you offer to law firms and teams that want to use it?
Yeah, thank you for this plug, by the way. So,
No.
Unfold Legal AI, we are a platform that we help immigration attorneys to streamline their drafting and research process. We have a number of offerings on the business immigration side. We have H-1Bs, EB-1As, O-1As, EB-2, national interest waiver, you name it. And we're still developing more products sort of for that track. Earlier this year, we started developing tools for our removal defense and family-based practitioners as well. For instance, FOIA, right? FOIA has becoming more and more relevant in the immigration landscape, and we started working on products including motion to reopen, including waivers, and so forth. So essentially, the technology will allow you to drag and just dump all your documents, let's say 70, 80 documents for EB1A case. And through the platform, the AI agent will be able to extract important information, do the research. And if you are a business immigration practitioner, then for, let's say, for O1A, there are criteria. The documents will be auto-categorized under each criteria. And if you click into the evidence, our tool, our product will allow you to do deeper research. We will show you the citation, we'll show you where the source came from, and also you can decide as the lawyer if this is something that's relevant or not really. So that's sort of the document extraction, investigation part of it. And once you have all the evidence ready to go, we can generate the letters for you. We can generate a petition letter, recommendation letter, list of exhibits. So it's very end to end. This whole process would take, assuming you have the documents, the whole process should take minutes, 5 minutes or under 10 minutes for sure. For FOIA, it's also I think very interesting because I had to read a lot of FOIAs when I was practicing, our team still do. So we thought, okay, so it's every FOIA, if you have to understand your client's immigration history, then you have to read the FOIA. FOIA, it's 800 pages, very dense, lots of information. So how can you better utilize your time, right, by advising your clients on strategy versus just reading information? So what our tool can help you do is we can give you a very detailed timeline in under 2 minutes or so. If the client has 2 A numbers, we can pick that up for you. We can tell you from very early on the entry date, prior history, immigration judges, the decisions, any BIA appeals, criminal history. It's all there. And on top of that, we are building an AI agent for you to converse with. So if there's any additional information you want from the FOIA reader, just ask a question and we can put the information for you. Once you have the information, naturally you want to think about what to do next. So that's where the motion to reopen comes in and waivers comes in, right? So that's all based on FOIA.
So you basically, for the FOIA tool, for example, you have the FOIA. It's one really long document basically that you ingest into the tool. It reads it and then it knows what to pull. It already has effectively what prompts built into it, I guess, and it knows what to look for, what to pull, what information is relevant. And then on top of it, there's a chat interface where if you want additional information or you want to ask, information based on what it's pulled, you can do that. Is it also...
Oh, I'm sorry, Roman. By the way, every information we give you on this timeline, we give you the page numbers too. So you can click on the page number, you can verify the information yourself.
That's great. And actually, obviously Freedom of Information Act would be data that's now made public. But what are the privacy implications? Is there's like model training, or is this fed into like a ChatGPT, OpenAI API, et cetera?
Great question. So I think most of the AI companies are very well aware of not sharing your clients' training data with foundation models. Same thing with us, closed universe. We don't use the data to train models. Once you create your own account, that's your universe. That's yours, and we can't access. We can't read it either. I mean, there's the most we can know from the back end. It's maybe documents have been uploaded, but we have no access to any of your private information.
Mm. Okay, that's really. I think it's really good for people to know. That's one of the biggest questions that come up
Yeah.
when attorneys, especially, but frankly anybody, is thinking about using a new AI tool. So that's really awesome. So you've got, I mean, you obviously have the research and drafting for the employment-based cases. Now you're working on, you said FOIA, motion to reopen. What else do you have coming down the pike? Like, what's been interesting for you, or what do you see that's missing that you guys want to tackle?
Briefs and waivers. And we haven't on the business immigration track. We haven't launched L1s. We haven't launched EB5s. Think we should work on that after the motion to reopen and waivers and other products are sort of released and on track. But also the RFVs is a big part of what we want to work on.
And who would be your target audience? I mean, I know you're obviously, when we met each other in person finally at ALA conferences, obviously, but is it immigration lawyers and law firms? Could like in-house teams use it if they do their own drafting? I don't, what do you guys think?
If you look at our ICP, we
Can you define that for the
Yeah,
non-business people?
sure is ideal customer profile. So
Yeah.
look at your top paying customers. What do they look like? How many employees do they have? Where do they practice? So if you look at our ICP, our ideal segment, it's the small firms and mid-sized firms. So you're talking about 4 people, 5 people firm to, or maybe even solos, to like 20 people to 40 people firms. That's our ideal sort of segment for our ICP. And I think our tool will be extremely valuable for the small firms because that's where, for instance, the FOIA reader, if you don't have the reader, then you as the partner or the founder would have to spend the time and read the FOIA, right? So now you have the reader, then you can, you're comparing having the FOIA back, spend just on your to-do list for a week maybe, or a few days, versus the FOIA is back. Put it into our FOIA reader, have the results ready. Meanwhile, you can have your paralegal call the clients over, set you up with a phone call, and explain what happened in the past, and explain to the client, this is what we're gonna do. So you're saving essentially a week, maybe even more time on getting to your client's strategy and moving on to the next step, the conversion step.
Interesting. So this is pre-conversion. This is working with the client initially to say, okay, here's what your FOIA says. Now here's our, because I mean, forgive my ignorance. I never
every
did
firm
this.
does this differently.
Yeah. Okay.
It's very interesting. So some firms, we include the FOIA as part of the future strategy. Some firms like to do the FOIA first. It's a 2-part conversion process. So the client will have to pay for a FOIA first, and then the attorney would go over the results from the FOIA, and then they move on to the next stage.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you say, look, here's what your FOIA says. Based on that, here's what we think is possible.
Exactly. And the sooner you can do that, right, the sooner the client can
Right.
come to you, and we can move on to the next stage.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, so in a sense, for people who do it in a 2-stage process, it's almost also like a sales tool, right? Because you're still selling them effectively to sign up, to work with you and engage with you on the post FOIA, whatever the next steps are. So you're using, in this case, Unfold to give them a response quickly, which will give them some information, of course, but then it's used to say, like, to upsell them. Okay, here are the options, and you should work with us on those options.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Sales, or as I would call it, scale, can help your firm and infrastructure scale. Right now, with just a small team, maybe 3 or 4 people, you can help 400 clients once you have the FOIA reader back, right? The results, and so can certainly help the firms and our clients scale faster.
That's so cool. It's so interesting. And I love how you mentioned in the beginning or earlier this idea of being niche, where you started off with EB5s and, with particular demographic and kind of have grown from there. The drafting of certain of certain types of documents, and then in this case, FOIA, motion to reopen, is also a pretty niche use case for AI. But to your point, it delivers value. And then, typically you grow from there. If you do a really great job in your niche, you're set up for success. Whereas if you do a decent job or a mediocre job for a huge use case, it's not really that exciting for most people. I want to ask you, as we wrap up here, because it's such a great conversation. I think we can probably talk for another hour. I like to ask this question. You're now kind of in another stage of your career, or maybe you're morphing, right? You're going from a manager partner at a law firm. You're still doing that, obviously, but now you're a tech CEO. A lot of times people ask, what advice would you give yourself based on what you're learning now to your younger self or to somebody? I like to flip that question and ask, what advice are you listening to now that's helping you get through something that you're working through now?
Wow, that's a great question. I think all the podcasts and biographies certainly help, because a large part of that it's learning how other people went through the dark moments and how they dealt with it and came out on the other side. I think having a great team in place is super important. I think most founders should spend more time on recruiting, and I do certainly spend a lot of time on recruiting, because I think that's really the name of the game. It's having a great team in place. And if there's one thing I sort of kept going back to, is just take your time. Because a lot of you will hear, especially if you're in the AI space, every day you hear AI companies valued at billions of dollars, right? You hear companies that reached 200 million ARR in 2 years. And I think this is where the biographies really kind of ground me, because if you look at all the business that are around now, right, that's been around for a very long time. It didn't, sure, it's different era now, but it took them a long time to build that foundation, the customer base, and so forth. So I just tell myself, work on what we know, work on what I do best, and don't be in a rush. And it's okay to make mistakes. Just learn from it and move on.
I love that. That's a great reminder. Patience. Well, Jason, this was awesome. I really appreciate, you sharing your story and the insights. And, it's been really wonderful to see your team at conferences, year after year. Hopefully I'll see you at the New York ALA conference, maybe even before that, who knows? But yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And, I definitely, by the way, for folks, if they want to find you, what's the website?
It's unfoldlegal.ai.
Unfoldlegal.ai. I'll have to have you back on the show to talk about where the name came from. But thank you, Jason. I appreciate you. And shout out to Brooklyn Law School for building, inspiring, great technology, great companies. So thank you, Jason. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Roman, for doing this for the immigration community. Big fan. Talk to you soon. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Amazing. Well, thanks to everybody for tuning in. What a great episode. I definitely could have talked to Jason for so much more. There's so much to learn. Hopefully we'll have Jason back. Wanted to say thank you again to the main sponsor of this episode, 8 a.m. DocketWise. So DocketWise, again, is an end-to-end immigration case management platform. They provide best-in-class immigration forms. And as people know, forms are really difficult because when they're updated, you have to have a team that actually updates the technology. So people use DocketWise for forms, even if they don't use anything else. So check them out for that. They have customizable questionnaires, industry-leading integrations, including with Laborious, my company, great customer service. As I mentioned earlier, they're create a lot of content and support for the industry. So DocketWise has a podcast, a blog, ebook, so much more. They support this show and they support other things within the industry. So really great company. Thank you so much to DocketWise. Visit them at 8am.com/DocketWise to check them out. And of course, if you do, tell them you heard about them from the GMI Rocket Show. So with that, thank you everybody for watching, for tuning in. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section, for Jason or for myself, and we'll get back to you there. And of course, have a wonderful weekend. Be safe, and see you guys on the next episode. Peace out.